In the climax of The Last of Us, should Joel have saved Ellie? No, he should not have. What's up guys, Acer Thorn here, and welcome to another video game lore and discussion video. This series focuses less on cracking jokes, and more on well thought out, heavily scripted, intellectual, and serious story analysis. If you're only subscribed to my channel for my jokes, and aren't interested in any thought-provoking, serious story analysis, then I recommend you turn back now. Now before we continue, I want to make this perfectly clear. I have never played The Last of Us. I physically can't play it because I don't have a PS3 or a PS4. If that, in your opinion, automatically disqualifies me from being in a position to analyze its story, then I recommend you click away from this video right now. However, I am nevertheless intimately familiar with the story of The Last of Us, having seen every cutscene in the game, as well as watching a 6-hour supercut of all the cutscenes. Thus, I consider myself to be in a position to offer an opinion on the story of this game, as long as I don't analyze the gameplay. So I consider myself entitled to have an opinion on the story, just as I am entitled to an opinion on a movie that I see. If you are the kind of person who insists that I have to play the game before I can have an opinion on the story, then the video is done. I don't know what I'm talking about. But if you believe that the story can be consumed independently of the game, then I would opine that Joel committed a horrible atrocity when he saved Ellie. So, for the 2% of you who haven't clicked away for either of the aforementioned reasons, and for those of you who aren't familiar with The Last of Us' story, for whatever reason you're here, here is a breakdown of the plot. Joel lives a normal life in Texas with his daughter Sarah. We know it's Texas because of this line.
No getting into Travis County.
There is only one Travis County in the USA, and that's in Texas. Anyway, on the night of Joel's birthday, an outbreak of cordyceps overwhelms the population. For the entire game, nobody ever has an explanation as to exactly where this outbreak came from, or how it overwhelmed humanity so quickly. Also, the infection is never even given an official name. It is referred to throughout the entire game as merely the infection, and those who have it are referred to simply as the infected. The prologue is absolute pandemonium, with everyone and their mother wanting to escape to somewhere they'll be safe from the outbreak, but having literally nowhere to go that is truly safe. In one of the most heart-wrenching scenes in video game history, Sarah is killed by a soldier who is under direct orders to kill anyone who tries to escape a quarantined perimeter. 20 years passed, and Joel has apparently coped with this loss by not giving a damn about anyone or anything. He lives his life as a mere beast, focused solely on his own survival to the exclusion of literally anyone else who doesn't help him achieve that goal. Meanwhile, the military has managed to restore some semblance of order through apparently permanent martial law. There is a heavy implication that this martial law has been continuous for the past 2 decades. The military summarily executes anyone who shows even the first signs of infection. No trial, not even so much as 30 seconds to give any last words.
I don't like it. Gosh. Hold her down. Do it.
The story begins when there is a new beacon of hope for humanity discovered. This beacon of hope is Ellie, a girl who was bitten 3 weeks before the events of the game. Despite being bitten 3 weeks ago, she has not turned yet, despite it being common knowledge within this game's universe that a bitten person turns or becomes a full-fledged infected within 48 hours. Somehow, Ellie is immune, and the Fireflies want to find out the reason why. Is it just Ellie's genes, which can't be helped or controlled, that provide this immunity? Or is it something else? Perhaps something that could be recreated if they knew the conditions. If it is the latter, then they may be able to take that and use it to finally put an end to the outbreak and restore civilization. The Fireflies' leader, Marlene, tasks the game's player character Joel with escorting Ellie to the Fireflies' quarantine zone, which is clear on the other side of the country. On this journey, Joel slowly takes a liking to Ellie, although I am hesitant to see it as a father-daughter relationship for reasons that I will get to in a bit. However, when Joel and Ellie finally get to the Fireflies' headquarters, Joel receives some news that, and let's be honest here, he probably had lurking in the back of his mind the whole time anyway. Ellie's immunity can indeed be replicated because the immunity comes not from Ellie's genes, but from a mutation in the cordyceps themselves, meaning that this mutation can be lab-grown and mass-produced if the doctors are able to know how to make it. The problem is that they can't extract the fungus without killing Ellie.
Doctors tell me the cordyceps, the growth inside her, is somehow mutated. It's why she's immune. Once they remove it, they'll be able to reverse engineer a vaccine. A vaccine.
But it grows all over the brain.
It does.
And without even considering the matter for more than a few seconds, Joel proceeds to murder his way to the operating room. The climax of this game consists of Joel going on a murderous rampage as he kills everyone in his path on his quest to rescue Ellie from death. The biggest moral question that this game leaves us with is, did Joel do the right thing when he saved Ellie? Should he have left Ellie to die, or was he right to stop the operation? My opinion is the former, and I will explain to you why. I have heard several arguments over the years defending Joel's actions in the game's climax. Most of them, however, can be classified into one of 3 categories. First, that the world is beyond saving and/or doesn't deserve to be saved. This encompasses such arguments as guys like David the pedo cannibal aren't gonna just disappear if the cure's found, or the world is getting what it deserves for what it did to Sarah, etc., etc. So let's discuss this argument that the world is beyond saving, because I don't see any evidence for it. Are there people like David the pedo cannibal who are absolutely horrible excuses for human beings despite not having the excuse of being infected? Absolutely. But what a lot of fans of this game seem to forget is that we have people like that in our world too. Of course, they aren't terrorizing us on a daily basis, because they're usually rounded up and placed in prisons, where the only people they can hurt are other inmates. Would people like David the pedo cannibal and other people like him just magically disappear off the face of the earth if the vaccine were developed and mass-produced? Of course not. But people like him would still be tossed away from the rest of society, out of sight and out of mind, and so the living conditions for law-abiding citizens would nevertheless improve. What the world of The Last of Us lacks is a system of government. We have the quarantine zones, sure, but those are only held together through martial law. The Fireflies want to return all branches of government as well as a Bill of Rights, something the society simply cannot afford to keep while the Cordyceps are controlling humanity. The next argument I hear in Joel's defense is that there's no guarantee that the cure will work. Well, this argument has ever so slightly more evidence to support it than the argument that the world doesn't deserve saving, since a lot of people can point to a specific audio recording to back up their claims.
April 28. Marlene was right. The girl's infection is like nothing I've ever seen. The cause of her immunity is uncertain. As we've seen in all past cases, the antigenic titers of the patient's cordyceps remain high in both the serum and the cerebrospinal fluid. Blood cultures taken from the patient rapidly grow cordyceps and fungal media in the lab. However, white blood cell lines, including percentages and absolute counts, are completely normal. There is no elevation of pro-inflammatory cytokines, and an MRI of the brain shows no evidence of fungal growth in the limbic regions, which would normally accompany the prodrome of aggression in infected patients. We must find a way to replicate this state under laboratory conditions. We're about to hit a milestone in human history equal to the discovery of penicillin. After years of wandering in circles, we're about to come home, make a difference, and bring the human race back into control of its own destiny. All of our sacrifices and the hundreds of men and women who've bled for this cause, or worse, will not be in vain.
According to this audio recording, some people say that there were others who were immune, but they were unable to find a cure for the infection. Thus, these people argue, what reason do we have to believe that Ellie's case is guaranteed to yield a cure? Now, I will get to the rebuttal in a minute, but before I do, I want to make something perfectly clear here. Even if this audio recording is proof that prior immune test subjects ended in futility, it still doesn't matter, because Joel clearly did not consider this as a factor when making his decision, as evidenced by the simple fact that he had no way of knowing that this audio recording existed until after he had already committed to killing everyone. At best, this would only retroactively justify his decision, the key word being retroactively. It does not make his decision in the moment to be any less evil. Arguing that he stopped the operation because there was no guarantee it would work is nothing short of unashamed Monday morning quarterbacking. But even taking this argument in a vacuum, I still see no evidence to support it. We clearly see from the audio recording that there were other test subjects, but I don't hear any indication from the doctor that these test subjects were immune. In fact, I actually hear evidence to the contrary. Specifically, he says that he had examined prior infected test subjects and noted their conditions during the prodrome to aggression. Now, when an affected person starts acting aggressively, that's known as turning. That's straightforward enough. However, does anyone even know what prodrome means? Now, I wouldn't expect anyone to just already know what prodrome means. That's not exactly a word you hear in everyday conversation. But then again, that's what dictionaries are for. So while it may not be your fault initially for not knowing what it means, it is still your fault for not looking it up first before you form your opinion on what this audio recording means. Prodrome means a premonitory symptom of disease. Meanwhile, premonitory is an adjective that means giving warning. So this doctor is describing prior test subjects who had symptoms immediately before attacking non-infected people. So clearly these test subjects turned, meaning they aren't immune. So I am sorry, but I do not find this audio recording to be persuasive evidence that they had similar immune test subjects who ended in futility. In fact, to argue that there were others directly contradicts what Marlene says to Joel.
Find someone else.
There is no one else.
The next argument that I would like to address is that Joel sees Ellie as his daughter, possibly even the literal reincarnation of Sarah. However, I find this to be a very hard pill to swallow. I see literally zero evidence to support this claim, and on multiple occasions Joel actually shoots the idea down. The most prolific example of this is when Joel rejects Ellie as his daughter in this moment.
You're right. You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
But even after Joel kills the rest of the Fireflies, he still acknowledges that Ellie is not Sarah.
Don't think I ever told you, but Sarah and I used to take hikes like this. I think the two of you would have been good friends. I think you really would have liked her. I know she'd have liked you.
She would have been good friends with Sarah, but she isn't Sarah. Clearly, he does not see Ellie as being his daughter, just a person he cares for in a strictly platonic relationship. Besides, Joel has absolutely no reason to see Ellie as his daughter, surrogate or otherwise. The events of the game, minus the prologue, take place over the course of a single year. There isn't enough time for a surrogate father-daughter relationship to flourish. I can love my own child with that level of devotion, but only because it's my child. A person who I'm entrusted with caring for will almost certainly not become a surrogate child to me after only a year of strictly platonic interaction, especially when it started out solely as a business arrangement.
Jesus Christ.
Just cargo, Joel.
To argue that Joel sees Ellie as a surrogate daughter is to effectively concede that Joel isn't playing with a full deck. If we accept that, if we accept that Joel is clearly kooky, then whether he did the right or wrong thing ultimately becomes a moot point. Nothing Joel does even has to make any sense, because he's only acting on his own deranged primal urges, and therefore morality becomes irrelevant. And besides, Joel makes it clear to Tommy that he doesn't want a daughter anymore, and he doesn't want to remember Sarah.
It's a little faded, but it still looks pretty good.
I'm good.
You sure? I mean...
I've said I'm good.
Okay.
So I don't see any evidence that Joel is acting out of compassion or fatherly love for Ellie. But even if we dive head first into this theory that Joel sees Ellie as a surrogate daughter, and still accept that there is still some morality to his actions despite his clearly delusional mindset, it still does not matter. merely by assuming any sort of fatherly responsibility over Ellie does not justify an otherwise purely evil deed. Now you might think to yourself, well, we've never really been in Joel's shoes, where one of our children could die, so we have no position to argue what we would do in that situation, even if some good were to come out of it. However, that is actually not true. While we will almost never be confronted with the ultimatum of sacrificing one of our children to stop an apocalypse, the situation is a lot more relatable than you might think. Specifically, I am referring to military enlistment. Most families in the USA will allow, and even approve of, their sons enlisting in the military upon graduating high school, knowing full well they could die on the battlefield. They don't want to lose their son, but they understand that protecting the nation is more important than a single life. Oh, sure, nobody joins the army with the full knowledge that their death, in particular, is 100% certain. But then, after you've enlisted, sometimes your mission is to guard the bomb and make sure it goes off without the enemy being able to disarm it, knowing you're going to get caught in the blast radius yourself. Sometimes that's just your mission. And you enlist knowing that a mission like that could be assigned to you. Likewise, Ellie went to the Fireflies probably knowing that the operation could be lethal. She knew the risk and she wanted to go through with it. So all in all, I am not persuaded by the argument that Joel sees Ellie as his daughter. Unfortunately, there is just too much stuff for me to cover on this topic for one video. So tune in next week as I conclude my analysis of Joel's decision to save Ellie at the expense of damning the rest of humanity. In the meantime, if you thought my arguments were compelling and well thought out, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and be sure to subscribe for more in-depth story analysis. Also, check out some of my Let's Play videos, where I take a more lighthearted approach to these games and just have a good time. In the meantime, however, I'm Acerthorn, and I'll see you guys later.